And right now I'm joined by David Hain. He's an internationally certified addictions counselor. Now, if you're listening to the show for the first time, Dave joins me every Tuesday around about this time, and we talk about topics related to addiction. And this time around, we've been doing a series over the past 10 weeks or so, looking at topics that affects families of addicts, and we've basically been advising families, and Dave has been giving out some good advice with regards to families of addicts and how they can deal with a family living in their home, a family member who is an addict. So there's been a lot of rich conversation and a lot of good connections made as well. Dave, as usual, welcome to the show. Good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing well, and it's great to be here. Hope you're doing well too.
Yes, I am. Thank you. It's great to have you here today, as usual. Now, Dave, over the past 10 weeks, 11 weeks, we've been talking about various topics. We've been posing various questions, and you've been answering those questions for us. This today, we're asking another question. We're asking, does everyone in my family need counseling because they are living with an addict in the house? Then a question that follows that one is, what is family therapy all about? Now, when you are sober and you have an addict who's a brother, a sister, a mom, a dad, or cousin, whatever, you don't really think that you do need therapy. How does that work?
Well, the family is so focused on the addict getting help, the addict coming right, the addict going away to rehab, and they assume that if this person just comes right, everything's fine. And, to me, that's sort of like assuming that we can be caught up in sin and never have to repent. If we just stop, then everything's fine. There's no residual effect. There's no dust. But the truth is, an addict is in the home stirring up the dust all the time. And everyone in the home gets that dust on them. And so, whether we're talking the traditional family, so if it's, mom, dad, and a few children, whether it's the extended family going to auntie and uncle and cousins and gran and nieces and nephews, or whether it's the elected family where an addict has this close group of friends or the neighbor next door or down the street. We really need to look at all of those families who've been affected by the addict. Another elected family are our peers at work, our friends at work, who, if someone really has an addiction and they're struggling through the work, it affects all of us.
Right. So it is traumatic on everybody who's actually exposed to someone who is addicted to a substance, even to pornography, even to gambling, because all the dust that is stirred up as a result of those actions, it kind of settles, and I think that is the problem. And we don't realize that the dust settles on our skin or on us.
Yes.
And that is the problem, and this is why therapy is important, eh?
Yeah, because it really settles, in our brains, it settles in our heart, it settles in our emotions, it settles, physically. I meet so many family members over the years who have physical ailments as a result of the stress that they've been living with in the home. And, they develop ulcers, they're dealing with anxiety or depression, they're dealing with high blood pressure, they're dealing with fatigue, just a variety of physical ailments just from living in this chaotic environment, having the aggressive language going on, that it's almost like, the people who aren't using are in a boxing match every day, and they're the ones losing. They're going 10 rounds and just absorbing all the punches.
Dave, what do you say to someone who is the only person sober and not using in the home? Everybody else, and I can talk up to 6, 7 other people in the home, they all using. Well, what do you say to that one person? How do they cope?
Yeah, and for me, it's a couple of things right up front. They obviously need to admit to themselves that they're not the cause of everyone using, and they're not the solution to everyone using. So we can put pressure on ourselves because most of the people using will blame us at some point. So they try to make us believe that we're the cause. And if we love all those people, we've tried to help them. We've tried to get help for them. And as the sober-minded one, we assume that we can come up with the good ideas on their behalf.
Right.
So I think right up front, we have to remove that sort of cause and effect thing, that it's not about us. And then the second thing that I say, the best thing for coping, besides God as our anchor and our refuge and our comforter, if we look at just sort of practical day-to-day things, I advise the family members to not ignore their five senses. So I tell them, you should be doing something every day, every week, that you enjoy seeing, that you enjoy smelling, that you enjoy hearing, that you enjoy tasting, and that you enjoy touching. So if we think of our five senses, for me it's the difference between why do so many people go to the beach to walk rather than Main Road? Well, they go to the beach because it involves their senses, and it brings this feeling of refreshing to our eyes, to our ears, to our feet as we feel the sand in our feet. So we need to intentionally do things that we build into our life that bring us a refreshing. So I'm not confusing this with the refreshing of the Holy Spirit. I'm saying physically to get good feelings pumping through us, because that helps alleviate the stress that's in us.
Okay, it's just gone 15 minutes after 10 o'clock on the Tuesday edition of the 9 to 12 show with me, Jeremy van Wyk, CCFM 107.5, 96.7. I've got Dave Hain with me, and David is an internationally certified addictions counselor, and he joins me every Tuesday on the show. And in this particular series, we are looking at topics for families of addicts, how to equip them on how to deal with the situations and the stresses that arises living with someone who is in active addiction. Just going to quickly pay the bills, and we'll be back with more. Stay tuned. And this is the 9 to 12 show, 17 minutes after 10 o'clock. Welcome back. Dave, when a family member of an addict comes to see you, what do you take into account? Well, what are you looking for? What are you assessing then?
Okay. Well, right up front, I ask them what is their purpose for coming, what are their goals, because it's important for me to meet their expectations as they express their needs, because it takes a lot of courage for a family member to come forward and say, I think I might need help too. And very often they're concerned, am I doing the right thing? Have I been doing the right thing? So at first I meet that need, but then I look at very specific everyday areas of their life, and I start with their physical state. How have you been feeling? How's your health? How have you been sleeping? When you wake up in the morning, do you wake up refreshed or do you wake up still tired? How have you been eating? Have you had a big weight gain or a weight loss in the last few months? So really looking at markers that I could see that would indicate there is some physical effects that are negative going on here. Then the second area we look is the mental or emotional impact. So really begin to now look at peace versus stress. Joy, are you experiencing joy? Almost going through the fruit of the Spirit. The 9 fruit of the Spirit are a good emotional marker evaluation for each person. The third area I look at is the relational or social impact. Obviously, your relationship with the addict is strained. How about your relationship with the other members in your home? How about your relationship with friends at church? And look at the ripple effect. It's very normal that as the addict creates chaos in the home, the family members begin to isolate from friends who actually could be a help to them. And they isolate from activities because they never know what explosion is going to be taking place at home. A fourth area I look at is the financial impact, because that'll also give me an idea, are they enabling or not?
Right.
But, to talk around, are you keeping food on the table? Are all your bills paid? Did you have to take out a second bond to pay for rehab? How are, you sober ones doing as far as the financial impact? Next area would be the housing impact. Are you allowing the addict's friends to come?
Mm-hmm.
Or is that boundary being respected or not? When the addict's friends come, do they party? When the addict's friends come, do they stay overnight? When the addict's friends come, do your other children feel safe?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel safe in your own home? So really looking at that housing impact. Another one is the educational impact. It's very typical that if there's an addict who has younger siblings, the younger siblings will give up on school earlier than if there's no addict in the home, because they're living in this chaos. They don't have the quietness, they don't have the space or the privacy to keep up with their homework, and they're seeing this, sort of gangster lifestyle. Right. Another one is time. I try to get a feel for someone. Is this someone who feels like there's never enough time in the day because they have so many things to do? Or is this someone who is just living in fear and the day doesn't go by long enough? So I start talking about, how does your day pass? What does your time look like? And then finally, what's the impact of the addict's offspring in the home? And it's very typical to find the grandparents raising their grandchildren because mom or dad is still an addict. However, I'm also finding an increasing number of great-grandparents raising the offspring. So I'm meeting grands in their 70s raising toddlers. Right. And, if we just go back to all of the other areas I named above, what an impact that has on a 70-year-old who's supposed to be enjoying life without having to be mom all over again.
Just clarify for people listening this morning who find themselves in that situation and sitting there thinking that, I need therapy, I need counseling as well. There is a difference. Or let me ask you the question, is there a difference between counseling and therapy for the addict and the family member who now also needs therapy? What is the distinction there, if there is a difference?
Yeah, there's a huge difference. I think initially, if we look at the addict, the counseling is around what's the wound that's going on to that has resulted in the addict self-medicating. And as we uncover that and look at the healing that the addict needs, then we also need to look at moral regeneration, spiritual restoration, being reintegrated into the community. Those last three aspects, the family members' morals haven't changed with the addicts typically. The family members typically should still be involved in the community and respected in the community. The family members should still be in a good spot as far as their spiritual walk. So those aspects really are more heavily involved with the addict. If we look at the family members, we're really looking at, educationally, do you need to understand addiction? And then now looking at your wholeness and your well-being, almost in spite of the addict. Are you doing the things that I said earlier about the five senses, but also do you feel validated in the choices that you've made in regard to the addict in your home?
How, in your experience, David, and you've counseled many people during your career, how challenging is it for a family member who's undergoing therapy or counseling to actually make peace with all the betrayal, with all the lies, with all the stealing, and all the bad things that they've been exposed to through the addict's behavior? How challenging do people really find that?
Hugely challenging. It is the elephant in the room that you can never ignore. And typically the addict has lied several thousand times, has broken promises several thousand times, has broken hearts several thousand times, has stolen, has whatever, been aggressive and verbally and possibly physically abusive. So there's a huge level of mistrust. And so as I work with the family members, one of the hardest things is to get them to the point of being able to say, I don't need to be the one that's checking up all the time.
Right.
Because whether I check up or not is not changing the addict's behavior. Mm-hmm. It's changing my stress level. So little things like if mom finds drugs in the addict's bedroom, my counsel is take it and flush it down the toilet. Don't ever mention that you found it. Don't make a big deal out of it. Don't cause an argument by it. Don't shove it in the addict's face and say, how could you bring this into my home again?
But here's the situation. The addict knows it's there. And when they come back, they're going to want it. If they don't get it, things might not be as peaceful. And that's a fear.
Right.
Many people would have in that particular situation. What do they do?
Yeah. Typically, what I say is you just flush it. The addict will either not say anything because they know earlier you've set a rule, no drugs in the home, or the addict will come quite aggressively. The difference being, if you have it in your hand and you're going after the addict, you're already at an aggressive emotional state rather than at a calm state where you can be in charge of the discussion. So if the addict comes at you aggressively saying, look, what do you do with my drugs? You can just say, there's no drugs allowed in this home. So any drugs or any paraphernalia that I find in this home, I get rid of. And so that's just part of the love and respect that we require in the home. And the hard part of that as I work with family members is we're really defining, as we're counseling the family members, does the addict belong in the home?
Maybe I'm not getting it, Dave. When you're in a situation as a family member and you've been physically hurt by the addict, and clearly you are afraid, you're scared of your safety. Mm-hmm. When you find those drugs, you are not going to say to the addict if they come looking for it, listen, I flushed it, because there are boundaries. Those are extreme situations, but they do exist, and people get into those situations.
Sure.
And it can be potentially life-threatening because the addict is not in control.
Yeah.
What do they do?
Yeah, and I think the key is if you fear for your physical safety, which is always utmost, then be willing to involve the police. Be willing to call the police and say, look, this is what I found. It is my son's, it is my daughter's, and perhaps Paulsmore is a better place for them to be for the next 90 days than in the home, because there's too many of their friends dying in this community as a result of their addiction.
You can send through SMSs right now, 083-788-9494, 083-788-9494. If you have a question for Dave or you need a bit of advice, you're more than welcome. You may remain anonymous, of course. 083-788-9494. That is the SMS line. If you want to give us a call in studio, 021-788-9494, 021-788-9494. Now, Dave, we now know that sometimes calling the police and getting the person arrested is the only way out.
Yeah, and the reality is, and it's really, really hard for moms especially to see their son go to Paulsmore.
Or daughter.
Or daughter. And there's a fear that if they go there, they're just going to meet worse gangsters.
Right. Is that not a valid fear?
I don't think it's a valid fear. It would be a valid fear if I wouldn't hear of another person getting shot every week in Cape Town. And I'm not hearing of just one. I'm hearing of multiple shootings. And, Special Assignment just had a feature on Mannenberg this week, just pointing out the gang violence and how it just is escalating. And the reality is, younger kids are getting involved in gangs. Younger kids are getting killed. Younger kids are carrying weapons. I mean, this isn't grown adults. This is youth, with no fear of taking someone's life, no respect for life, over small things. And so the reality for me is there's more people dying as a result of their addiction on the outside than there are inside prison. And there are more people coming to their senses inside prison because they're now in a space where they really have time to think. And there are so many volunteers going into prisons and professional people going into prisons who want to help, who want to be able to counsel, who want to be able to hold Bible studies, whatever it might be, to give that person a chance to begin making good decisions with a clear head. So I tell people, don't fear that.
Okay, if you want to send through a question, 083 788 9494, 083 788 9494. Dave, as a family member, do I need to think, do I need to feel that there's something mentally wrong with me if I come to you and say, listen, I need therapy because I have an addict living in the home? Do I need to feel that there's something wrong with me?
No, and I think an easy way to look at it is a family is a system. It's a group of people that have, something in common, and they're living in the same home, and their system, their behaviors, the way this place functions has its own norms and its own rules. And so even if you just say, look, I need to come and check out if our family system's healthy. Are there things we need to tweak? Are there things we need to change? So really looking at what are your family rules? What are your family boundaries? What are your family expectations? How do you keep balance? How's everybody interconnected? What are the functioning roles? Who's the head of the household? Who's in charge of the money? Who's in charge of the cleaning? Who's in charge of the cooking? Really looking at the way this family functions, and then to be able to just calmly say, well, if one of the parts in your system is broken, how does it affect each of the other people? Or if one of the parts in your system stops functioning in a way that contributes and is just someone that keeps draining and draining, what do you do? How do you function like that? So it's very easy to begin to look at it from that standpoint. And I get tons of questions from family members who just say, hey, here's my situation tonight. What do I do?
Okay, we have a caller. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Hi.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on what your speaker said with regards to the prison system, and that it might be a better place for drug addicts to go to cool down or whatever the terminology was that he used. I think one of the challenges we have is, let me rephrase that. I think when you have reported news on what's happening in places like Manenberg and Bonteheuwel and so on, and the crime that's happening on the street, I understand that's the reality and that's the truth. But when you look closely at our prison systems, it's really not a safer place to send somebody that's on drugs. I just wanted to make that comment.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. And I want to clear, I'm not saying that the prison systems are our rehabs. I'm saying if the people are involved in crime, and the question that Jeremy said, if someone's in fear of their own safety, what I'm saying is there is a place out of the chaos. Where do we find a place out of the chaos? Be it a prison, be it a rehab, and if you're sending your son or daughter to rehab and they keep running away, and their life is totally out of control, then there needs to be some place to arrest their behavior, to give them a place to slow down.
Can I just say one more thing? You see, there are certain systems in the prison, and the systems that exist within our prison, this is the subculture that exists within our prison, it forces you to become part of whatever is designed to survive. And so if someone that has just had a bad deal with some bad friends ends up doing drugs, they now put in prison, they are now forced into a system that forces them into worse crime and makes them victims of all kinds of other crime. Surviving within the prison system, cause them to become somebody else. And depending on how long they stay in that survival mechanism stays with them when they get out, there's all kinds of other things that I wouldn't want to discuss on air or in public now, but there's all kinds of other things that happen that now causes them to take on a completely different persona in order to survive not only in prison, but to survive when they leave prison.
So with another system in terms of what Dave is saying here, and I can hear the logic, I can hear what you're saying as well, just in terms of when there are volunteers and there are ministries working within the prison system, because we have such a serious problem, I don't know, and it's a question I'm asking because you sound very knowledgeable on what you're saying here, and maybe Dave can chip in as well here. Wouldn't this be part of the solution to arrest the problem that we're having people on drugs when they are sent to prison, that there's another system that is created where the volunteers and the ministries and the spiritual leaders work aggressively with these people when they come in?
Yeah, and there are several prisons around the world that do that, and one of my hopes would be, even in places here in South Africa, that one building or whole areas could be given to ministries to run.
Okay, Caller, you just want to respond to that as well?
Yeah, you know what the church is doing, and I'm a church leader, and I'm involved in prisons. What the church is doing is good, but it's really an opportunity to create. The church creates an opportunity for somebody to reach Jesus, who is a way to get out of this.
Right.
The church is not there 9 to 5 when these inmates have to survive, and that's the challenge that I have with taking. I'm just thinking, I've got a son of 23 years old. If my son had to be, just had a bad deal with tick or so on, ends up in prison, it's not going to do him good.
Okay. I hear you.
So I have to say there needs to be, there's a gap for other kinds of facilities that I think could become a public, private, marriage to try and create a facility that would help, especially first or second time offenders when it comes to drugs.
Okay.
I agree.
Thank you so much for your call. Appreciate you coming through.
Okay.
God bless you. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye. There we go. It's gone 24 minutes to 11 o'clock. Dave, so in terms of, us taking definitive and strong action when we are faced with violence coming from the addict, what are the other alternatives?
Yeah, I think getting the police involved is an alternative. I think getting the social development department involved is an alternative. Get a caseworker out to do
getting the
a
church
home
involved?
visit, getting the church involved. There's a variety of avenues to take. There's mentoring programs. There's short-term and long-term rehabs. The key is, and there's a difference between a first and second time offender and someone who's just been offending every day, and they just haven't gotten caught. And so when they get caught, that's not necessarily their first offense. So the key for me is how do you get a place that will meet the needs of the people that do want help, but also meet the needs of the people who don't want help.
Okay.
And there's the rub. And I mentioned briefly when the caller called in, one of my heart's desires would be if we look at a place like Paulsmoor, just because that's close, if there'd be one building, one section, say it only houses 200, say it houses 500, and to say, is the church ready to stand up? Can we pull a group of people from the church together? Can we pull in a Victory Outreach who has experience in 12-month rehabilitation program? Can we pull a team together and say, tell you what, how about you guys run that section? And whether it run as a pre-release for 12 months before people are reintegrated back into the community or whatever, and have the inmates actually bid in to that and say, yeah, I do want that Christian approach. I do want this approach because I want to turn my life around.
So it's like the caller said earlier, that there needs to be a private-public partnership in terms of getting facilities like that going as an alternative and a possible solution to kids just reoffending and it's just becoming this habit.
Totally. And when inmates are released, when offenders are released, there needs to be, through partnerships like that, as simple a way as possible for these ex-offenders to get back on their feet when they're released. So something like the Dream Center in L.A. We'll just pick. Let's pick a place like Weinberg.
Right.
That if every offender knows, just go to Weinberg, ask for the place with the yellow door.
Sure. Okay.
And then you go into the yellow door, and there's people there that help with health and work and housing and all kinds of things.
Okay. We have another caller on the line. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine, thanks. My name is Celia.
Welcome.
I just wanted to say, Jeremy and Dave, this is such a fantastic program. Please keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Celia.
Sorry?
I said thank you, Celia.
Oh, yes. I think you guys are doing such an amazing job. I personally haven't, I've only really seen here in the people who are addicted to drugs. But my question has to be with the whole jail issue that you guys were speaking about before. My question is, but what about people who really do not want to stop doing drugs?
Yes.
For me, I find that's the real problem. What other way is there for them to restrain them for not only harming themselves, but harming their other family members? Because that's the problem, is when they deliberately want to continue in their negative behavior that harms other people. What else should be done for them? Yes.
Very interesting question. Celia, hold on. Dave's going to answer you right now.
Yeah.
Can I listen on the radio?
Yes, you may.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
thanks, Celia. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, Celia, that's a good question. And I think it's safe to assume that for everyone caught up in addiction, it's a love-hate relationship. They love the high of the addiction. They love the lifestyle. They love the rush of addiction. They hate the consequences. They hate the shame and guilt. They hate the ill effects. They hate the pain they're causing everybody else. So it's quite normal to have people, even in the midst, one day they want help, the next day they don't. Those are very, very normal things. So, there aren't rehabs where you can lock people up against their will and say, you don't have permission to leave. You must stay here for 12 months. You must stay here for 6 months. So again, I look at the prison system as, one, a place that has buildings all over the world. Two, a system in place that is a system dealing with people who have gotten into trouble. So how do we take that system, and I'm not against the prison system at all, how do we take that system and bring in the church and bring in the private sector and bring in corporate donors to be able to provide rehabilitative opportunities for inmates coming in. And again, most of the people that end up in prison are there as a result of their addiction and the crimes they committed in their addiction. So even if someone is just going to get 6 months' time until they appear in court, how can that 6 months actually look like a rehab? How can that 6 months involve group sessions 5 days a week? How can it really be constructively a thing that is working on change if the offender is interested in change? And I don't think we can just expect the Department of Correctional Services to start doing that. I really believe it needs to be a partnership. It needs to be bringing in qualified people from the outside with a heart for that, working in partnership with the correctional services to be able to focus on not only the addiction, but to focus on the wound that caused it.
Okay, and I just want to apologize to you if you sent in an SMS. I did find it strange that no SMSs came through, but our signal system on the computer was down. It's up now, and I just want to go through the SMSs we received this morning. My brother, and I think it's more of a comment, this one, Dave. My brother is a drug addict for 18 years, and my mother don't want to get rid of him. I just want to say an insane person can make a sane person insane.
Correct.
Okay.
I agree.
Let me just see. Ek leef met een en hy het met snaaks laat voel want sy optrede was anders. Ek vra hom en hy antwoord maar al die oë in die huis is okay. I don't know whether that is related, lady. I need help with my addict son. My wife has already made up her mind to leave me. Trevor, please help.
Well, I think the key is if they've already made up their mind, then, is it a time for intervention? How do we set up that intervention to just put all the cards on the table and say, these are the options we have. Where do we go from here?
Okay, so intervention, that is the way you will advise Trevor.
At that point in time,
okay,
yes.
I just want to say to you that I'm going to give out Dave's contact details after the segment ends, so keep a pen and paper handy. Want to go back to the lines quickly. Good morning.
Good morning. I've got a very interesting story about Dave about the drugs, but unfortunately I only got a 50 cents for the payphone. It's about my son that's in Kokstad. He's a prisoner for 20 years. You know, he's gone through a course of drugs. He's been a dealer. He's so against drugs. He's given his heart to Jesus.
Amen.
He's had a Bible study in prison, which he had a certificate, and he passed the test. And if he comes home, he said he doesn't want to find anybody with drugs in our house. He's going to fight against drugs. So he's far away on a single cell.
Okay, there. Well, this is basically what she's saying.
Yeah, and I think to respond to that, one of the things that I'd really like to emphasize, the number of offenders that get saved in prison, get their spiritual restoration in prison, get their heads cleared, and really get a heart for helping others while they're in prison is growing and enormous. And you can see it. I mean, call up ministries like Hope Prison Ministries and say, how many ex-offenders do you have that are working for you guys, that are volunteering to come back into the prisons 4 or 5 days a week because they want to help their brothers and sisters in prison? And you will be alarmed at how many are doing that.
Okay. One SMS is saying that I do not think it's a good idea to phone the police. My son was arrested and the police beat him up and he was not guilty.
Yeah, and you know, I can't speak to that particular incident. You know, there's risks of beating up on the streets. There's risks of beating up in prison, in police stations, all over the place. So,
but that's the hardcore nature of the lifestyle of being an addict. You expose yourself to all these dangers.
Right. Yeah. And no gangster chooses to die.
Right. Right.
But they're getting shot.
Right, and that is why, as families, members, and families of people who are addicts, we need to equip ourselves in order to help them make the right decisions, so that we are strong enough to carry them sometimes.
Yes.
Not enable them, but to carry them sometimes.
Yeah. And to walk with them.
Right.
You know, when they're not ready to walk. And I just want to clarify. I used the word alarmed. That you would be alarmed at how many ex-offenders are back in helping. So I didn't mean alarmed as a negative thing. You would be amazed. It's a good thing.
Okay. I'm going to have to translate this one. Good morning, Pastor. I'm a single parent with a son of 16. He smokes dagga. As hy nie rook nie, dan is hy rustig. Okay. If he doesn't smoke, obviously he's restless, so he's craving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's very normal, but I think the key is at 16, we have a chance to step in before his behavior gets out of control. So just because he's 16, or just because it's dagga and it isn't that bad, whatever the viewpoints in your community might be, that's no reason to ignore that he needs help. So I would definitely, you know, at 16, he's still under your household. He's, you know, you're still cooking his meals, doing his wash. You can require that he starts counseling, that he starts getting involved, at least in a group setting.
Okay. I want to read this SMS, and it's a very sad SMS coming through, Dave. Hi, my name is Carol, and I have a son, and he's on drugs. I'm writing this SMS with tears in my eyes because he was a manager at the time, and it's painful for me to see how he is destroying his life. I do not know what to do.
Yeah, and I think the key right up front here is addiction is across all socioeconomic lines, all races, all colors, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're employed, or whether you're not. And the other thing is that once addiction starts, everyone in addiction begins to lose things. And in this case, you know, losing a career, losing a job, losing self-respect, whatever it might be. And that's why, you know, I urge people again and again to be encouragers for people to get into some place where they can at least begin to see, hey, maybe this problem's bigger than I'm admitting to myself. And for me, that's groups. 90% of what I do is in a group setting, because then it's not one-on-one where the person thinks I'm the expert and they're the sick one.
Okay.
You know, they're sitting in a group of peers, and they may hear some other person talking about their wife who's an addict who just did this, this, and this, and they go, wow, that's exactly me. I didn't think I sounded that bad.
Right. Okay, I want to go to two of the last SMSs that we can deal with for this week. We have quite a few SMSs. Also want to give out Dave's details, so stand by for that. I have an SMS in from Jeanette. It says, "Good day. I would like to know, my son gave up the drugs 3 weeks, but now he has problems with aches and pains. What can I do? And can't sleep."
Yeah, very normal. Our drugs numb our aches and pains, and depending on the drug, it numbs our physical aches and pains as well as our emotional. So the key is look for healthy exercise, healthy diet, healthy sleep, and lots of water.
Okay.
Lots of water, because he's going through a process of flushing these drugs out of his system and how they've affected the organs and muscles in his body.
Right. Why is there no detox rehabs, only stickland?
Yeah, I'm new to this country, so I can't answer for that. The key is, from a medical clinical standpoint, not all drugs need medical supervision during the time of detox. And in the States, heroin is huge, and heroin is one of those things that requires a medical clinical detox for 3 to 5 days. So it may be as simple as that, heroin not being as big here.
Sure. Okay, our final SMS, having a section like that, and it's just people commenting on the comment that you made about a special section at prison, saying having a section like that at the prison will be so helpful. I had my daughter in prison for 3 months due to drugs and stealing stuff from us, but she came out of prison and fell back into drugs. So, there's a lot of work ahead. There's a long road forward, but it's not an impossible one. It is possible. It just requires us to equip ourselves and strengthen us with good spiritual knowledge as well as how to meet this head on, and
Sure.
just depend on God to bring about the healing and the change. Dave, thank you so much for coming in this week. We'll see you back next week again. Just give us your contact details briefly.
Okay, great. My landline is 021-782-1117. My mobile is 073-065-0999, and I am on WhatsApp. My Twitter is at David from A to D, and my website is www.fromatod.com. And I just want to put this out there, since we spent so much time talking about the prisons. If someone's listening and your auntie is Helen Zilla, feel free to give her my contact details, and I'd be willing to sit down and chat about putting a program together.
There we go. Okay, 073-065-0999, 073-065-0999. You can contact Dave right now. He's on WhatsApp, and that is his cell phone number as well. If you missed it, Jackie at reception has all the details, 021-788-9492.